So on Tuesday's edition of the Carton Show, Greg Carton, who is a host on Fox Sports One, came out and said that he knows the real reason, or one of the real main reasons, why the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously my favorite sports team, collapsed at the end of the 2023 NFL season. But he said he cannot reveal why. And there was a lot of speculation out there, obviously, about, well, did a player sleep with somebody else's woman? That was completely defunct. But Derek Gunn, who was a reporter in Philadelphia, came out and said that obviously the banishment of Big Don, the security guard, after the incident that happened in the San Francisco 49ers game, caused a issue because Nick Sirianni is an emotional head coach. And I predicted this when it happened. I said this is a real issue. I also said it was BS and he was suspended for the rest of the season. I think the NFL took it way, way over the line with that. I realized, he shouldn't have put his hand on another player, but I really thought he was just protecting his team and his head coach after he got poked first by San Francisco. So with that, and I'm not being a homer here. I just didn't understand. I could get a game. I could get a game. I did not understand the suspension for the length of the season. But it made sense to me that it caused a rival with Nick Sirianni because Nick Sirianni is emotional, right? And I said this. Dan Campbell is very emotional, right? I'd rather have my head coach emotional and passionate and show that he cares about his players as opposed to a guy that just stands with his arms folded or a guy that just entrenched it in his call sheet. Um, so as an Eagles fan, this is where I'm going to address this. There's a lot of people saying, "Oh, this shows that Nick Sirianni's immature and Nick Sirianni should have been fired and he's being exposed, the clown and all this." And I'm not just saying this as a fan. I truly believe that Nick Sirianni is a good football coach, and I said this. He is the only coach in Philadelphia Eagles history to make the playoffs in his first three seasons. I don't think you get to a Super Bowl by just being a quack of a coach. Like, I think Mike McCarthy sometimes has game management issues. I don't think he's a terrible coach. I don't think he's the greatest coach in the world, but I don't think you can be a horrible NFL head coach and get to a Super Bowl because we all know coaching matters. And I've said this before that, and my wife and you guys have known, I've been in leadership positions in my young career. And when you are leaders, you're not only trying to establish the culture, but leaders are as only good as their staff. If your staff stinks, then you're going to stink as a leader, and it's going to reflect on you. I thought the only bad decision Nick Sirianni made last year was not firing Sean Desai. I thought he should have completely got rid of Sean Desai. If Sean Desai had lost his confidence so bad, which was what was reported by the Philadelphia media and by players, that he did not have confidence in his ability to call plays after the defense was shredded, by Buffalo, by San Francisco, by Dallas. And that was after just going into Kansas City and defeating them on Monday Night Football, shutting them out in the second half a few weeks prior. Uh, if you're not going to remove Sean Desai from the building, I think that's an issue. I think Matt Patricia is an issue wherever he's gone outside of Belichick. I think Matt Patricia is essentially a Belichick tool. I thought it was a bad hire when it happened during the offseason. I thought it was a bad decision to promote him as DC. So Sirianni made a mistake. But by Isaac out, I think him coming in, giving the offense to Kellen Moore, I think we're going to see more creativity on offense, a little bit more Jalen Hurts under center. I think Vic Fangio with that defense, which I do believe that they're going to keep Hassan Reddick unless they can get a premium for him in a trade package, which he is getting up there in age. So if you can get a first round pick and maybe a second or a third, I think you definitely think about it. But with this salary cap coming up and with this draft being a little bit of a deeper corner draft than it is usually, I think there's an opportunity here for this Eagles team to turn things around. And I think there's a misperception about this team that, Nick Sirianni's too emotional, that A.J. Brown's too emotional, that Jalen Hurts is not emotional enough. And I get all the criticism, but I'll say this: leaders lead in different ways. And I would rather have my coach too emotional and too fired up that sometimes he needs a bodyguard to sort of help him and restrain him back than being a guy that doesn't care at all. I realize there's a obviously short line there that you need to divide and not cross when it comes to being, too emotional versus not emotional enough. But I think Nick Sirianni, he may not be the greatest at the microphone, and he may not be the best play caller in the world. But the one thing we know how to do is he knows how to motivate players. I think the fact that guys like Jason Kelsey, guys like Fletcher Cox, guys like Brandon Graham, the veterans in that locker room came out and said, listen, it's not Nick Sirianni's fault. It's a player accountability thing. I think will speak volumes. I think that this team was extremely tired last year after going to the Super Bowl and after going for that gauntlet. This year, the schedule does seem to be easier. They're going to start off the first game of the year in Brazil, which I think will be a great opportunity for the team. I think they're going to learn their lessons from last year. And again, I don't know. There is better competition in the NFC right now than we seemingly thought. San Francisco, Detroit, Green Bay, Dallas certainly up there, and obviously Philly, I think, are the five best teams in the NFC. So I'm not here to say Super Bowl. I'm not here to say that obviously this goes sideways. Nick Sirianni is going to be gone at the end of this year. But as of right now, I'm defending Nick Sirianni. I would rather have a guy be too emotional than not emotional enough. I don't have a problem with him, getting into fights because he's just such an emotional guy, and we've seen it. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and in my opinion, Jay Wood-Ertz being the opposite of that, we often saw Brady so energetic and Belichick be the stern guy. That worked for 20 years. Can Jay Wood be the stern guy and Nick Sirianni be the energy guy? Well, Kellen Moore and a Vic Fangio, who's obviously a disciplinarian disciple, is sort of the opposite of Sirianni, I think will work. And I think that opposites attract. And again, I don't think you can be a bad NFL head coach and get your team to a Super Bowl, no matter what your role is, play caller or CEO, white head coach.
Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.